Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Zach Henderson moved into his dream home on the edge of a North Carolina neighborhood, he never expected to face a battle with the local HOA. But when an overzealous president, Karen, illegally blocked access to a gas line, Zach's quiet life turned into a fight for justice that changed the community forever. Zach Henderson, a 35-year-old history teacher with a penchant for peaceful solitude, had long dreamed of owning a home where he could escape the noise and demands of modern life. When he finally found a charming property on the outskirts of a small town in North Carolina, it felt like fate. Nestled among towering oaks and lush greenery, the modest house sat on a generous plot of land, a far cry from the tightly packed subdivisions that dominated the surrounding area. For Zach, it was the perfect retreat, a sanctuary where he could grade papers on the porch, tend to his modest vegetable garden, and bask in the freedom of not answering to anyone but himself. One of the property's most appealing aspects was its independence. Unlike many nearby neighborhoods, his land wasn't governed by a homeowners association. Zach had always been wary of HOAs. To him, they represented unnecessary bureaucracy and an obsession with control. He had heard enough horror stories from friends about fines for minor infractions like mismatched mailbox colors or lawn heights. The thought of living under such a system was anathema to his fiercely independent nature. Zach's property bordered Silver Grove, a new upscale development known for its pristine lawns, identical houses, and, as he would soon discover, a particularly ambitious HOA president named Karen Leslie. Karen was in her early 30s, driven and meticulous. With a penchant for power and a reputation for enforcing rules with an iron fist, she was determined to maintain Silver Grove's image as the pinnacle of suburban perfection. For the residents of Silver Grove, Karen was either a hero or a tyrant, depending on whom you asked. Zach first encountered Karen in passing. Her sleek SUV would glide through the neighborhood, her sharp eyes scanning every property for signs of deviation from HOA standards. Zach paid little attention to her at the time, confident that his independence from Silver Grove's jurisdiction would shield him from any interference. That illusion shattered one crisp autumn afternoon. As Zach sat on his back porch, enjoying a rare moment of peace after a long day of teaching, he caught a faint but unsettling smell. At first, he thought it might be a neighbor's barbecue, or perhaps the scent of fallen leaves smoldering in a nearby burn pile. But as the hours passed, the odor grew stronger. Concerned, he called the local gas company, who sent out a technician to investigate. The verdict was troubling. A gas line running through an easement at the edge of his property had developed a leak and required immediate repair. The gas company assured Zach that repairs would begin within 48 hours. Relieved, he thanked the technician and returned to his usual routine. But 2 days later, instead of the repair crew, Zach found something else entirely. At the edge of his property, where the easement granted utility workers access to the gas line, a gleaming metal gate now stood, flanked by freshly installed posts and secured with a heavy-duty padlock. A bold sign affixed to the gate proclaimed, "Silver Grove, HOA property, authorized access only." Stunned, Zach paced back and forth in front of the barrier, trying to make sense of the situation. He hadn't received any prior notice of construction, nor had anyone sought his permission to install the gate. A chill of frustration crept up his spine. This was an urgent safety issue. How could anyone think it was acceptable to block access to a gas line? His confusion quickly turned to anger as he realized the gate bore the unmistakable fingerprints of Silver Grove's HOA. Armed with growing frustration and a need for answers, Zach decided it was time to confront the issue head-on. Determined to resolve the issue quickly, Zach marched into the Silver Grove HOA office the very next morning. It was a tidy clinical space adorned with motivational posters about community excellence and framed photographs of perfectly manicured lawns. At the front desk sat Karen Leslie, the president of the HOA, dressed immaculately in a tailored blazer, her blonde hair swept into a no-nonsense bun. She looked up from her tablet, fixing Zach with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "How can I help you?" Karen asked, her tone neutral but clipped. Zach wasted no time. "There's a metal gate blocking access to a gas line easement on my property. It needs to come down immediately. There's a leak, and the repair crew can't get through." Karen's expression shifted, her smile growing tighter. "Ah, yes. That gate was installed last week. It's part of our new security initiative to protect Silver Grove from trespassers and unauthorized access to shared resources. I'm sure you understand." "I don't think you do," Zach replied, keeping his voice even. "That easement isn't Silver Grove property. It's a public utility. You have no right to block it. This isn't about security. It's about safety. There's an active gas leak." Karen leaned back in her chair, folding her arms with the air of someone accustomed to winning arguments. "If you're not a member of Silver Grove HOA, Mr. Henderson, you'll need to submit a formal access request. These requests are reviewed at our monthly board meetings. The next one is in 4 weeks. Until then, I'm afraid there's nothing I can do." Zach stared at her in disbelief. 4 weeks? This is a serious hazard. It could endanger everyone here, including your residents. Karen shrugged, her tone icy. "If you're so concerned, perhaps you should consider joining the HOA. Membership has its privileges." Furious but realizing he wouldn't get anywhere with Karen, Zach stormed out. His next call was to the gas company, hoping they could cut through the red tape. However, the company's representative was apologetic but firm. Their technicians couldn't risk trespassing on HOA-controlled property. Zach was stunned. It seemed Karen's influence extended further than he'd anticipated. As days turned into weeks, the situation worsened. Karen began spreading rumors among Silver Grove residents, claiming that Zach was a reckless landowner who ignored maintenance and posed a threat to the neighborhood. Subtle glances and whispered conversations followed him whenever he ventured near the development. A few of his own neighbors, previously friendly, started keeping their distance. Karen didn't stop there. The HOA filed a formal complaint with the Municipal Code Enforcement Office, alleging that Zach's property violated several ordinances. The claims were ludicrous. Overgrown grass, unstable trees, even accusations of debris posing a fire hazard. But they were enough to trigger an inspection. Zach had to drop everything to meet with an inspector and prove his compliance, all while the gas leak remained unresolved. The rumors and complaints culminated in a community meeting called by Karen. Zach, though not officially part of the HOA, was invited to explain himself. When he arrived, the atmosphere was hostile. Karen stood at the front of the room, passionately decrying Zach's irresponsibility and urging residents to demand his inclusion in the HOA. "It's the only way we can ensure everyone follows the rules," she declared, her voice brimming with righteous indignation. Zach's attempts to interject were drowned out by murmurs of agreement and the occasional shouted accusation. It was clear Karen had carefully orchestrated the event to paint him as the villain. Feeling cornered and increasingly desperate, Zach left the meeting determined to fight back, but knowing the road ahead would be anything but easy. Frustrated but resolute, Zach knew it was time to take the fight to the next level. He hired a seasoned property rights attorney, Linda Graves, who had a reputation for dismantling overreaching HOAs. After reviewing the situation, Linda confirmed what Zach had suspected all along. The gas line ran through a public utility easement, which legally could not be obstructed by any private entity, including the Silver Grove HOA. Armed with this confirmation, Linda drafted a cease and desist letter demanding the immediate removal of the gate and prepared to escalate the matter to court if necessary. Zach, eager to resolve the issue without dragging it into a prolonged legal battle, decided to confront Karen directly. He arrived at the HOA office with copies of the legal documents in hand. Karen greeted him with a cold smile, as if she had anticipated his return. "Karen, this has gone far enough," Zach said, keeping his tone calm but firm. "I have proof that the gas line is on a public easement. Blocking it is not just irresponsible, it's illegal. Here are the documents." Karen barely glanced at the papers before pushing them aside. "Mr. Henderson," she began, her voice dripping with condescension, "anyone can print off a few documents and call them proof. These look highly questionable to me. Perhaps I should forward them to our legal team." Zach's patience was wearing thin. "You're playing with fire, Karen. If this leak isn't fixed, the consequences could be catastrophic for everyone here." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Henderson? Because that sounds a lot like harassment. I should warn you, any further accusations or baseless claims could lead to a defamation suit. I suggest you think very carefully before continuing." The conversation ended in a deadlock, but Karen wasn't finished. Over the next week, Zach's property became a target. Bags of trash appeared in his driveway, and crude notes were stuffed into his mailbox. One read, "Keep your mess away from Silver Grove." Another warned, "Stay in your lane, loser." Zach suspected Karen had encouraged the harassment, though he had no direct evidence. The situation reached its breaking point when Zach managed to speak with a few Silver Grove residents who were beginning to see through Karen's facade. One neighbor, an older woman named Nancy, revealed that Karen had used HOA funds to pay for landscaping on her own property, disguised as a community beautification project. Another neighbor confessed that Karen had pressured him into signing off on a questionable rule change, threatening fines if he refused. Slowly but surely, Karen's carefully cultivated image of authority began to crumble. But Karen wasn't going down without a fight. On the day of the court hearing, as Zach prepared to leave for the courthouse, he found his driveway blocked. Karen's black SUV was parked sideways across the entrance, its hazard lights blinking. She was standing nearby, phone in hand, her expression smug. "You're not going anywhere," she called out. "I've called the police. You've been threatening me, and I won't stand for it." Zach's heart raced, but he kept his cool. He calmly took out his phone and began recording. "Karen, I'm asking you to move your car. Blocking my driveway is illegal." "You think you can bully me?" Karen shot back. "This is harassment, plain and simple. I'm well within my rights to protect myself and my community." Zach didn't engage further. Instead, he captured every moment on video and emailed the footage to Linda before dialing the police himself. When officers arrived, Karen's theatrics backfired spectacularly. Zach's calm demeanor and the video evidence painted a clear picture. Karen was the aggressor. The officers instructed her to move her vehicle, warning that further obstruction could lead to charges. The confrontation was the final straw. At the courthouse later that day, Linda presented the documents and video evidence to the judge, who ruled decisively in Zach's favor. The HOA was ordered to remove the gate immediately and fined for obstructing access to a public easement. The judge also noted Karen's actions in the driveway as troubling behavior, hinting at potential legal repercussions if she didn't desist. For the first time, Karen's confidence faltered. As Zach left the courtroom, he couldn't help but notice the cracks forming in her facade. The tide had turned, and now Karen would have to answer for her actions. The courtroom was quiet as the judge delivered the verdict, her tone firm and unyielding. "The evidence is clear," she announced. "The Silver Grove HOA has unlawfully obstructed a public utility easement, endangering not only the residents of the neighborhood, but also the plaintiff. This court orders the immediate removal of the gate and fines the HOA for its actions." Zach let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The months of frustration and relentless obstacles had finally culminated in victory. The judge's decision also included a requirement for the HOA to pay a significant fine for its negligence and compensate Zach for his legal expenses. As the final words were spoken, a ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. Karen Leslie, usually poised and commanding, sat rigid, her jaw clenched in barely concealed rage. But the fallout for Karen didn't end there. During the hearing, additional evidence came to light. It was revealed that Karen had authorized the use of HOA funds to install the gate without proper board approval, bypassing standard procedures. Further testimony from disgruntled Silver Grove residents painted a damning picture of her leadership. Witnesses described how Karen had encouraged false complaints against Zach and manipulated HOA regulations for her personal benefit. The court's findings left no room for her to hide. The consequences were swift. At an emergency HOA board meeting convened shortly after the ruling, Karen was formally removed from her position as president. Stripped of her authority, she attempted to shift blame onto her fellow board members, accusing them of pressuring her into aggressive actions. However, her claims fell on deaf ears. The board members, eager to distance themselves from her tarnished reputation, publicly denounced her behavior, labeling her a rogue leader who had overstepped her bounds. Karen's dramatic fall from grace was a spectacle that the community couldn't ignore. Residents who had once feared her enforcement of HOA rules now openly criticized her. Several neighbors who had supported her began to question their own involvement, expressing regret for not standing up to her sooner. Despite her efforts to salvage her reputation, Karen found herself increasingly isolated. As she walked out of the board meeting, her posture stiff and her face flushed with humiliation, Zach caught a glimpse of her through the window. For a brief moment, their eyes met. In her expression, he saw a flicker of something unexpected, regret perhaps, or a realization of just how far she had fallen. But Zach didn't dwell on it. He had fought hard to protect his rights, and now it was time to move forward. Back on his property, the gate was swiftly dismantled by a crew sent by the gas company, eager to complete the long-delayed repairs. With the easement restored, the neighborhood's utilities were finally secured. Zach watched as the workers replaced the corroded pipe, a sense of relief washing over him. The ordeal had been grueling, but standing up for himself had been worth every moment of struggle. For Zach, the resolution was more than just a legal victory. It was a testament to the importance of perseverance in the face of adversity. While Karen's reign over Silver Grove had ended, Zach's triumph became a rallying cry for the community, inspiring others to challenge injustice and advocate for fair leadership. With the court ruling behind him, Zach finally felt a sense of peace return to his life. The HOA was ordered to reimburse him for his legal expenses, a sum that not only covered his costs but also allowed him to make some long overdue improvements to his property. For the first time in months, Zach could focus on the simple joys that had drawn him to his home in the first place. Tending his garden, enjoying the crisp North Carolina mornings, and basking in the knowledge that his perseverance had paid off. In the weeks following the verdict, the atmosphere in the neighborhood began to shift. A few of the Silver Grove residents, previously staunch supporters of Karen's leadership, came by to apologize. One elderly couple admitted they had believed Karen's rumors but now realized how manipulative she had been. "You stood your ground, even when it wasn't easy," the husband said. "We admire that." Other neighbors followed suit, expressing gratitude for Zach's willingness to challenge the HOA's overreach. "You did what we were too afraid to do," one resident confessed. "Maybe now things will actually change around here." The HOA, under pressure from the community and legal scrutiny, underwent significant reforms. A new interim board was appointed, composed of residents committed to transparency and fairness. They prioritized rebuilding trust by revising the association's bylaws to prevent future abuses of power. Mandatory board meetings were made public, and decisions about community projects now required majority approval rather than unilateral action. For the first time in years, residents felt they had a voice in how their neighborhood was governed. Zach's victory became a local symbol of resilience. His story spread beyond Silver Grove, inspiring others in nearby communities to question unfair HOA practices and stand up for their rights. For many, Zach was proof that one person armed with the truth and a refusal to back down could take on a powerful system and win. Though he had never sought to be a hero, Zach found his role as a community advocate deeply fulfilling. When asked about his fight, he often downplayed his actions, saying, "I just did what anyone should do, stand up for what's right." But to his neighbors, he was more than just a determined homeowner. He was a reminder that fairness and justice could prevail, even against the odds. As the weeks turned into months, Zach often found himself reflecting on the unexpected journey he had taken. What had started as a fight for his own property rights had evolved into something much greater, a stand for fairness and justice that reverberated throughout the community. He realized that his determination to hold his ground wasn't just about protecting his land, it was about challenging a broken system and ensuring that others wouldn't face similar struggles in the future. In the wake of the court's decision, Silver Grove's HOA began a transformation. The newly appointed president, a soft-spoken but resolute woman named Emily Harper, focused on rebuilding trust among the residents. Public meetings became a regular occurrence, where homeowners could voice their concerns and contribute to decisions that affected their neighborhood. Emily also spearheaded the creation of a transparency initiative, which included detailed records of HOA expenses and decisions, ensuring that no one could misuse the association's funds again. In recognition of his role in catalyzing these changes, the HOA board extended an invitation to Zach to join their ranks as a member at large. It was a gesture of goodwill, a sign that the association wanted to repair its relationship with him and learn from his perspective. Zach, however, politely declined. He valued his independence and felt his work was done. "I'm glad to see the HOA heading in the right direction," he said, "but I'll leave the governing to those who enjoy it." Meanwhile, Karen's presence in Silver Grove dwindled to nothing. Stripped of her position and shunned by many of her former allies, she quietly sold her house and moved out of the area. Her name became a cautionary tale among HOA circles, a reminder of the consequences of unchecked power and arrogance. For Zach and the community, her departure marked the end of a turbulent chapter. To celebrate the resolution and newfound sense of camaraderie, Zach hosted a neighborhood barbecue on his property. It was a warm, sunny afternoon, and for the first time he felt truly at ease among his neighbors. Families spread out blankets on his lawn, children played near the garden, and the sound of laughter filled the air. It was more than just a gathering. It was a symbol of healing and unity. As Zach looked out over the scene, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. His battle had been long and fraught with challenges, but it had been worth it. He had reclaimed his peace, strengthened his community, and proven that even one person could make a difference when standing up for what was right. Smiling, he raised a glass of lemonade to his neighbors and to the future, grateful for the hard-won harmony that now surrounded them all.